Chapter 1. The Missing Boy from the Rich Family. The sky over Minatohama glowed orange as the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long shadows on the quiet streets. For most people, twilight was just the end of another day. But for Mira Takahashi, it was the hour when the world whispered secrets, the kind only she could hear. 16 years old and already burdened with a secret no one else could understand, Mira walked alone past a row of houses too grand for her neighborhood. Her school bag hung over one shoulder, while a faint whisper echoed in her mind like a radio tuned between stations. He's still here, trapped. Mira stopped in front of a black iron gate. The mansion beyond loomed with antique elegance. 3 stories of pristine stone walls, ivy-covered columns, and shuttered windows. This was the Kazahaya estate, home to Minatohama's most powerful family, and home, until recently, to their missing son. Yuto Kazahaya, 17, went missing 2 weeks ago. Police found no leads. There was no ransom, no footage, no witnesses. He had simply vanished one evening after a tutoring session. Some said he ran away. Others whispered darker things. Mira knew the truth was never that simple. The whispering begins. "General," Mira murmured, tapping her temple. "You there?" A deep voice answered in her head, formal and steady. "As always, child." A moment later, a gentle breeze stirred beside her, and a flickering, ghostly figure appeared. A tall man in full samurai armor, his long mustache like iron wire. General Roku Saito, her most stern and disciplined ghost mentor, hovered near the gate. "Anything?" she asked. Roku's expression was grim. "Something ancient lives in this place. Not evil, but bitter. Old grief, caged in ritual." Another voice giggled above her. "Oh, definitely spooky." Floating upside down in midair was Tomo, the playful ghost of a boy in 1930 school uniform. "I tried floating through the door and got smacked back like a baseball." Mira frowned. "A ward?" "A seal," came a new voice, calm, mature, and confident. Officer Kaede Ishikawa, a no-nonsense policewoman from the early 2000s, flickered into view beside the gate. She wore her standard patrol uniform, her belt half materialized. "The Kazahayas have protected this estate with something old. It keeps spirits out but not in. If Yuto is inside, he's not alone." The invitation. That night, Mira returned home to find an envelope tucked into her mailbox. No stamp, no sender. The seal was gold embossed. Kazehaya family, private invitation. Inside was a note written in careful, practiced calligraphy. "We are aware of your reputation, Miss Takahashi. If you possess the gift they say you do, we humbly request your assistance. No police, no publicity. We only ask for our son's safe return. R. Kazehaya." Kaede, reading over Mira's shoulder, raised an eyebrow. "Interesting that they believe so quickly." "I think they're desperate," Mira said. Roku nodded. Desperation opens the mind to truths it once scorned. The Mansion's Secrets. The next afternoon, Mira arrived at the Kazehaya mansion, escorted by a stone-faced butler. The hall smelled of old cedar and incense. The walls were lined with oil portraits of long-dead ancestors. No one smiled in the paintings. In the sitting room, she met Reiji Kazehaya, Yuto's father, tall, elegant, silver-haired. His wife, Ai, sat beside him, her eyes hollow from crying. "We've tried everything," Reiji said, voice tightly controlled. "Psychics, priests, none dared stay past sunset." Mira met his gaze. Then let me stay past sunset. He hesitated. If you find him, there will be a reward. I'm not doing this for money. AI clutched Mira's hand. He's a good boy. Please, he wouldn't just leave. After dusk. When the sun vanished behind the trees, the temperature in the mansion dropped sharply. The halls grew still. No breeze, no sound. Mira lit a single candle and walked through the corridors alone, though her ghostly mentors followed silently. Do you feel that? Kaede whispered, scanning the walls. Mira nodded. Yes, it's like something is trying to remember. Roku pointed to a hallway near the east wing. That room, the air thickens with old magic. Mira opened the door to what appeared to be a study. Bookshelves lined the walls. A single unlit fireplace lay cold. In the center stood a grand antique Shinto altar, dusty but intact. On it rested an urn, and beside it a black and white photograph of a boy. Not Yuto. Who is that? Mira asked aloud. Tomo tilted his head. I don't know, but I don't like his eyes. Then the whisper came, louder now. Help me. He won't let me leave. Yuto's spirit. Mira reached into her pocket and drew a protective charm, placing it on the altar. Yuto Kazehaya, she whispered, if you're here. I'm listening. A rush of cold wind snuffed the candle, and suddenly Mira was no longer in the room. She stood in a dreamlike version of the same study. Dust hung in the air like frozen snowflakes. On the floor sat Yuto, thin, pale, frightened. Mira, he whispered, I didn't mean to call him. I was just curious. Call who? Yuto pointed to the altar. I found an old diary. It said if I performed the rite, I could speak to my great-uncle Shoji. He died mysteriously. No one talks about him. Roku's voice echoed through the vision. Shoji Kazehaya, a dark chapter, accused of occult rituals in 1897, died under house arrest. Kaede added, if Yuto performed a summoning unprepared, he didn't just talk to the past, he invited it. Confrontation. Back in the present, Mira opened the hidden drawer beneath the altar and found the diary, bound in red leather. Pages described blood rites, summoning circles, ancestral offerings. I see now, Roku said grimly. Shoji cursed his own bloodline. Yuto was merely the next door. With the help of Kaide's protection charm and Tomo's distraction, he caused a chandelier to drop mid-chant. Mira conducted a purification ritual using sacred salt and rice wine. As she chanted, the walls trembled. A ghostly figure, tall, furious, and faceless, lunged from the altar. Mira stood her ground. You are forgotten, she shouted. Your pain is real, but your rage ends here. The spirit howled once, then crumbled like ash. Reunion. Yuto's unconscious body was found in the family crypt, unharmed but weak. He had no memory of the past 2 weeks. The family was grateful beyond words, though Mira declined their reward. Instead, she asked for one thing, that they burn Shoji's diary and hold a proper memorial for all forgotten Kazehaya ancestors. As she left the mansion, Tomo danced around her. You were awesome, like Ghostbuster-level cool. Kaede smirked. She's growing stronger. Roku gave a rare nod. The girl has spine and soul. Mira smiled faintly. She looked up at the darkening sky. One down, so many more waiting. Chapter 2. The House on the Top of the Mountain. The rumors started with a video. A shaky phone-recorded clip of a hiker stumbling down a fog-covered slope, eyes wide in terror, muttering about voices in the walls and blood dripping from the ceiling. The last frame showed the distant outline of a house, isolated, overgrown, and half consumed by mountain mist. The police called it exhaustion. The internet called it a hoax. Mira Takahashi called it a case. The Legend of the Forgotten House. "It's called the Izanami House," Mira said, flipping through old records in the town library. "Sounds dramatic," Tomo chimed, floating above her with his head upside down. "Was it named after the goddess of death on purpose?" "Kind of," Mira said. "It belonged to a man named Aoto Yamura, wealthy but reclusive, built this place in the 1960s, vanished in the 1980s. People started going missing on the trail soon after." Roku stood by the window, his eyes narrowed. "The mountain air here is unusually still. Something unnatural guards that place." Kaede scanned an old newspaper article. 3 teens missing after camping trip near abandoned property. "Same time every year," she murmured. "Late spring, right before the rainy season. Like clockwork." The climb begins. Mira packed light, just a backpack with purification tools, snacks, and a small voice recorder. The trail up Mount Senzan was overgrown but still navigable. She moved quickly, accompanied by her 3 ghostly mentors. As they neared the halfway point, fog began to roll in, heavy and unnatural. "Don't breathe too deeply," Roku warned. "This fog carries memory." Tomo zipped ahead through the mist. "I'll scout, and Junior pass." He vanished for 10 seconds, then returned face pale. "There's someone inside," he said. "A girl. Crying." The house revealed. The Izanami house emerged slowly through the fog. Weather-worn, moss-covered, windows shattered like broken teeth. It sat on a natural ledge surrounded by dead trees and decayed silence. Mira stepped inside. The air turned cold. Inside, furniture remained in eerie stillness, as if the owners had simply vanished mid-conversation. A table still held a rotting tea set. A child's shoe lay alone by the stairs. And then the crying began. A long, low wail that echoed from the second floor. Kaede drew her spectral gun. "Let's move." The second floor. The upstairs hallway was warped and splintered. Wallpaper peeled like skin. Mira passed a cracked mirror that reflected someone else's face. A girl, weeping, covered in blood. Then the whisper reached her. "Help me. Don't let him find me." Mira opened the last room on the left. It was a child's bedroom, pink curtains, a small desk, dusty plush animals. And curled up in the corner was a ghost, a teenage girl in 1980s clothing, knees drawn to her chest. She looked up and saw Mira. "You're not from here," the girl whispered. "You're alive." The ghost's tale. Her name was Rika. She and her sister Naomi had gone hiking years ago. They found the house by accident. "He said he'd help us," Rika whispered. "But he lied. He was sick. He brought others here before. Naomi never left this room." Mira's heart sank. A serial killer? Kaede's face darkened. I know this pattern. No bodies, just disappearances. Roku growled. The soul of the killer may still linger, and if so, he's feeding on the fear. Tomo floated to a wall and pointed. There's something behind this. Mira pulled aside a bookcase to find a hidden door, and behind it, stairs to the basement. The final room. The basement was a tomb. Rusted chains, scratched walls, symbols painted in dried blood, and standing at the far end was a tall, thin man with a twisted smile and empty eye sockets. His presence froze the air. He wasn't just a ghost, he was a wraith, a spirit so consumed by evil it had become it. Kaede fired her spiritual weapon. The shot passed through. He doesn't need a body, Mira whispered. He needs fear. Roku stepped forward. Then deny him that. Mira lit a purifying charm and walked into the circle. The wraith lunged, and Mira stood firm. You don't scare me, she said. You're just noise, hurt, hate. You don't get to control her anymore. A scream shattered the silence. And then, light, peace. When the fog cleared, the house was gone, literally. Where it once stood was just forest, untouched, unmarked. An illusion? Mira asked. Kaede nodded. Or a memory too dark for this world to keep. Tomo returned with a grin. Rika's with Naomi now. They passed on together. Roku nodded solemnly. This place is clean. Mira looked out over the valley below. How many more are out there? She asked. Too many, Kaede said, but one less now. Chapter 3. The Mysterious Student. The rain tapped steadily on the school windows, the dull gray sky matching the somber mood inside Minato Hama High. Mira Takahashi sat in her usual back row seat, half listening as the teacher droned on about Meiji-era political reforms. Her attention, however, was on something far less historical and far more unsettling. The girl sitting 2 rows ahead, Reiko Ishihara, the new transfer student, hadn't moved once since class began. Not a word, not a glance. She just stared out the window with a blank expression and eyes that shimmered faintly silver. Mira leaned closer. She's glowing, Tomo whispered, materializing beside her. I see it, Mira said. Her aura's distorted. Kaede appeared near the front of the class, disguised as one of the teachers. This isn't possession, she muttered. It's like she's submerged in something thick. Roku's voice, as always, was calm and grave. Not one spirit, many. That afternoon, Mira followed Reiko to the school storage building, an old structure long off limits due to maintenance. Reiko wandered in as if in a trance. Mira peeked inside and found the girl kneeling on the dusty floor, surrounded by paper scraps. Are those, Mira whispered, wishing cards, Tomo said, like the ones we used to fold in the 1930s. You write a wish, fold it into a shape, and hide it somewhere. There were hundreds of them. Kaede examined one. These aren't wishes. They're regrets, apologies, threats, hate. Every student who folded one poured pain into it. Mira picked up a card. The writing read, I wish they'd disappear. Another, I wish she'd stop breathing. At home that night, Mira dug into school rumors. One post on a student forum stood out. "You heard about the Yoru no Kibo game? Write a secret wish. Drop it behind the gym. If 10 people do it at once, it comes true." Mira stared at the screen. 10 students, 10 wishes. A game fueled by desperation. But no one ever considered the emotional toll. She turned to her ghosts. "They made a curse," she said, "together without meaning to." Roku nodded. Collective guilt can birth something powerful, something dangerous. Reiko's role. Mira returned to the storage building the next day and confronted Reiko. The girl blinked. "You can see it too?" Mira nodded. "What happened, Reiko?" Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. "I just wanted them to stop bullying me. They said if we all made a wish, it would come true, but they tricked me. They all wished something horrible. And now I can hear them in my head." Tomo tilted his head. "They used her, made her the vessel." Roku's eyes sharpened. "She carries the collective spirit. That's why she's fading." The Purging Ritual. To release Reiko, Mira needed the original 10 students who played the game. She found them, 7 still at school, 2 who had dropped out, and 1 who had died in a traffic accident just last month. Kaede helped Mira confront them. Some denied it, others wept, one tried to run. But Mira wasn't after punishment, she wanted truth. At midnight, they gathered behind the gym. Mira stood at the center, Reiko beside her. One by one, the 9 living students read their wishes aloud, acknowledging them, then burning the papers. As the final paper turned to ash, the air grew cold. A dark fog twisted out of the ground. Tomo stepped forward. "Here it comes." A creature formed, shapeless, shifting, made from the combined pain of the students. It lashed out. Mira shouted, "This isn't real! You are not their guilt anymore!" She placed her hand on Reiko's back and poured in her own energy, calm, forgiveness, clarity. The creature screamed once and vanished. Aftermath. Reiko collapsed but woke minutes later, blinking in confusion. "I feel lighter," she whispered. "You're free," Mira said. The others stood silently, some crying, others hugging. "You all made a mistake," Mira told them, "but you faced it. Don't forget what that pain did or how you ended it." In the shadows. As the school returned to normal, Kaede lingered beside Mira. "More like this will come," she said. "Not curses from one evil soul, but from many frightened ones." Mira nodded, watching Reiko laugh with a group of classmates. "She got her second chance," Mira whispered. Roku placed a hand on her shoulder, and so did they all. Reiko's role. Mira returned to the storage building the next day and confronted Reiko. The girl blinked. "You can see it too?" Mira nodded. "What happened, Reiko?" Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. "I just wanted them to stop bullying me. They said if we all made a wish, it would come true, but they tricked me. They all wished something horrible. And now I can hear them in my head." Tomo tilted his head. "They used her, made her the vessel." Roku's eyes sharpened. "She carries the collective spirit. That's why she's fading." The Purging Ritual. To release Reiko, Mira needed the original 10 students who played the game. She found them, 7 still at school, 2 who had dropped out, and 1 who had died in a traffic accident just last month. Kaede helped Mira confront them. Some denied it, others wept, one tried to run. But Mira wasn't after punishment. She wanted truth. At midnight, they gathered behind the gym. Mira stood at the center, Reiko beside her. One by one, the 9 living students read their wishes aloud, acknowledging them, then burning the papers. As the final paper turned to ash, the air grew cold. A dark fog twisted out of the ground. Tomo stepped forward. Here it comes. A creature formed, shapeless, shifting, made from the combined pain of the students. It lashed out. Mira shouted, "This isn't real! You are not their guilt anymore!" She placed her hand on Reiko's back and poured in her own energy, calm, forgiveness, clarity. The creature screamed once and vanished. Aftermath. Reiko collapsed but woke minutes later, blinking in confusion. "I feel lighter," she whispered. "You're free," Mira said. The others stood silently, some crying, others hugging. "You all made a mistake," Mira told them, "but you faced it. Don't forget what that pain did or how you ended it." In the shadows. As the school returned to normal, Kaede lingered beside Mira. "More like this will come," she said. "Not curses from one evil soul, but from many frightened ones." Mira nodded, watching Reiko laugh with a group of classmates. "She got her second chance," Mira whispered. Roku placed a hand on her shoulder, and so did they all. Chapter 4: Lover's Lane. Autumn arrived with a whisper, scarlet leaves twisting through the air like fragile flames, blanketing the roads and school courtyards in beauty and silence. But in one quiet part of town, the rustle of leaves was replaced by the sound of whispered heartbreaks and quiet sobs. It was a place Mira Takahashi had only heard of in rumors, Lover's Lane, a forested path behind the riverbank bridge, once a favorite for couples, was now avoided, especially at night. Too many breakups, too many sudden accidents. Even those in happy relationships reported strange fights after passing through. "They say people feel watched," one classmate said, "like something wants them to be alone." Mira had heard enough to know it wasn't just bad luck. The sorrow in the wind. That afternoon, Mira visited the riverbank. Kaede walked beside her in silence, arms folded, senses alert. Tomo floated ahead, pretending to sing love songs. "It's like a graveyard for high school sweethearts," he joked, until he reached the center of the trail and stopped mid-hum. "I feel cold," he said, "lonely, really lonely." Kaede glanced around. "It's thick here, like the air's been crying." Roku appeared under the bridge. A grudge, female, strong, repetitive energy. She relives the same moment over and over. Mira placed a hand on the bark of a tree. The wind shifted, and she heard it. "He said he loved me." Traces of the past. At the town's archive, Mira found an article dated 1996. Young woman found drowned in the river, ruled a suicide. Witnesses say she had been left waiting for hours before being found near the old bridge. Her name, Haruna Aiba. Tomo read the file aloud. She was supposed to meet her boyfriend here. He never showed. Rumor was he broke up with her the day before. She never left, Mira whispered. Kaede crossed her arms, and now she punishes anyone who dares love here. The confrontation. That night, Mira returned to the trail with a lantern and a love letter, a symbolic offering. The air grew still as she stepped beneath the tree canopy. Haruna Aiba, she called out. I know your name. Leaves stirred violently. A shadow appeared ahead, a woman in a white sundress, hair wet, face pale. Her lips moved. They all lie. They always leave. A couple walking nearby screamed and ran as branches whipped toward them. Mira stood firm. I'm not here to lie to you. The spirit moved closer, tears now streaking her face. He said forever. He said... Roku stepped forward. She's repeating the moment of her abandonment. We must stop the cycle, breaking the loop. Kaede's voice was steady. Mira, remind her, she's more than that pain. Mira held the love letter high and lit it with a match. This is for you, Haruna, for all the love you deserved. The flames flickered brightly. Haruna stared at them, trembling. I believe you loved with your whole heart, Mira said. But love doesn't chain the living. Let them love freely. Let yourself be loved again, in peace. Haruna's form began to glow. She stepped forward and smiled, just once. Then she faded. A breeze swept through the trees, warm and calm. Love that endures. The next week, Lover's Lane became lively again. Couples returned. The air no longer hung heavy. Laughter echoed once more under the trees. Tomo floated in a heart shape. Hey, Mira, think you'll ever date someone? Kaede smirked. Let her finish school first. Roku added gravely, and any suitor must pass my tests. Mira laughed. The sound carried on the wind like something lighter than sorrow. Maybe, she said, if he's brave enough. Chapter 5. The Old Portrait. The hallway of the Minatohama Town Museum stretched in eerie silence, its creaky floors and dim lighting doing little to soften the atmosphere. Most people came for the war memorabilia or historical artifacts, but Mira Takahashi was here for one reason only: the painting in Room 7. It had no official title, just a small brass plaque beneath it, Artist Unknown, 1891. Locals called it The Watcher, an oil portrait of a man seated in a velvet chair, wearing a black coat, his pale hands clasped in front of him, his expression unreadable. His eyes, painted with uncanny precision, seemed to follow you wherever you moved. Museum staff said the painting caused nausea, dizziness, and even fainting. Some guests claimed to see it blink, and one guard, a man in his 40s, was found unconscious after claiming the subject spoke to him. The invitation. This place gives me the creeps, Tomo muttered, floating in midair beside Mira as they passed antique swords and dusty scrolls. Kaede appeared near a display of police badges. Security guards said he heard the portrait whisper, repeated a phrase, "Finish what I couldn't." Mira glanced toward room 7. "Sounds like unfinished business," she said. General Roku stepped beside her. A soul trapped by its own creation. Artists sometimes pour too much of themselves into their work. The portrait room. Room 7 was cold, unnaturally so. Mira entered slowly. The painting stood on an easel, roped off. Fluorescent lights flickered above it. Tomo floated close, then recoiled. "He's watching me." Mira approached the painting. The man's eyes were gray, intense, almost sorrowful. The brushstrokes were masterful, but the canvas felt alive. Suddenly, Mira felt a strange pull, a whisper in her ears. "Finish it, please. I can't leave." The artist speaks. That night, Mira returned after hours with permission from the curator, who had heard of her discreet consultations. Kaede stood guard at the door. Tomo hovered near the skylight, nervous. Mira placed her hand on the frame. And suddenly, the museum was gone. She stood in a candle-lit studio. The walls were lined with unfinished portraits, faces that blurred and shifted. In the center sat the man from the painting, no longer oil and canvas, but spirit. His name was Renzo Hayama, a painter once renowned in Meiji-era Tokyo. I painted myself into that piece," he said. "I was dying. I thought if I could capture my essence, I would live forever." Mira nodded slowly, "But it trapped you instead." Renzo's hands trembled. "It's not complete. The background, I never painted it. I didn't know what belonged behind me. My spirit has no setting, no rest." Roku's voice echoed faintly. "He is a soul lost in form. Give him a finish line." The final brushstroke. Mira returned to the studio with art supplies. "Wait, are we painting?" Tomo asked, wide-eyed. "I'm going to finish it," Mira said. "He needs a background, someplace he belongs." She closed her eyes, letting the emotion from Renzo's trapped soul wash through her. And then she painted. A garden, soft clouds, an easel behind him, the sun just rising. As the final stroke dried, Renzo's eyes in the painting shimmered with tears. "That's it," he whispered. "That's where I want to be." A breeze swept through the gallery. The painting's chill vanished. A silent frame. When the museum reopened, visitors noticed the portrait had changed slightly. The man now sat before a peaceful garden, and the uneasy feeling was gone. His gaze, while still intense, no longer followed, but watched, peacefully. The guard who'd fainted, he returned and smiled at the painting, saying it felt like an old friend. Kaede folded her arms. One more soul at rest. Tomo tilted his head. "Do you think I'd look good in oil paint?" Roku gave him a sideways glance. "Only if the canvas screams in color." Mira smiled, stepping away from the painting. On to the next one. Chapter 6. The Old Well. The town of Minatohama had many old places. A forgotten shrine here, an overgrown park there, but none were as whispered about as the well behind Kudoi Middle School. Mira had passed it often growing up, the school's fence partially hiding the stone ring and rusted bucket. It had been sealed with a metal grate years ago. The school said it was for safety, but some said it was to keep something in. Students whispered that if you stood near the well at midnight and listened closely, you'd hear crying. Sometimes, your name. This week, that urban legend turned into something real. The challenge game. It began with dares. A group of middle schoolers snuck out one night with flashlights and filmed themselves braving the ghost of the well. They posted the video online, but the next morning one of the boys collapsed in class. He woke screaming, his eyes rolled back. Another was hospitalized with violent chills and burns on his fingers, despite no fire. Mira watched the video. The camera shook, the image grainy, but at the 2:13 mark, she paused it. A hand, gray, long-fingered, dripping wet, was reaching out through the metal grate. Kaede, watching beside her, scowled. That's no prank. Tomo shivered. Wells are bad, deep water, deep regrets. Roku's voice rang with certainty. There's something ancient here, something forgotten. Echoes from the depths. That night, Mira climbed the school's back fence and approached the well. Kaede kept watch. Tomo darted ahead, and Roku lingered at her side. The well was colder than the night air. Even sealed, a chill rose from it. Mira knelt and placed her hand on the stone rim. "Help!" The whisper was faint, but clear. "I didn't mean to die." Mira frowned. It's a child. Tomo floated low and peered through the grate. There's a doll down there. And bones. Real ones. Kaede looked grim. That explains the cold cases. No one thought to search a sealed well. The lost girl. Through her research, Mira discovered a local missing person report from 1977. A 10-year-old girl named Mayu Inoue, last seen walking home from school. Some thought she ran away, Kaede said. Others suspected a kidnapping. The well was locked in the 80s, but no one ever searched it. She didn't run, Mira whispered. She fell. Mayu's spirit began to speak, through sobs and memory fragments. She had been bullied, pushed near the well's edge. The others ran. She fell, and the well was forgotten. Alone, she had died in darkness. Unsealing the truth. With the school's reluctant permission, Mira led the excavation. Bones were recovered, a rusted lunch tin, a soggy notebook with faded writing. The next evening, Mira returned to the well to perform a releasing ritual. "Mayu," she called gently, kneeling, "you're not alone anymore. We remember you." She lowered a lantern, then scattered white flower petals. Tears rolled down Mira's cheeks. The wind stirred, soft and cold, and a small, translucent figure floated upward, a girl in a school uniform, clutching her doll. "Thank you," she whispered. She vanished in a shimmer of moonlight. Peace at last. The school built a small memorial near the site, a plaque engraved with Mayu's name. Students left flowers. Teachers offered silent prayers. The fear vanished. So did the crying. Tomo sat beside the stone marker one evening. She waited all that time. Katie nodded. No child should die in silence. Roku placed a hand on his sword hilt. Another soul has found her way. The world is lighter for it. Mira stood quietly, watching petals drift into the breeze. "Let's keep going," she whispered. "There are more out there." Chapter 7. The Wailing at the Dorm. The girls' dormitory at Minotoma Academy stood just beyond the school's sports field, a 2-story building with pink-tiled walls and ivy crawling up its edges. It had always been peaceful, even cozy, until the crying began. Late at night, residents started hearing a faint wailing. Soft and distant at first, it grew louder, more anguished. Doors rattled, lights flickered. Some girls woke to find bloody handprints on their walls. 2 students had already transferred out, and one girl had fainted after seeing a figure crawl across her ceiling. Rumors bloomed, a curse, a murder, a ghost that hated girls. Principal Nakatani quietly called Mira into the dorm. "Smells like fresh paint and fear," Tomo said, floating beside Mira as they entered the dorm one Sunday afternoon. Kaede swept her flashlight across the hallway. No EMF spikes, but definitely something residual. The crying is strongest between 1 and 3 a.m. "Not just a haunting," Mira said. "It's centered around one room, room 2B. A girl named Mina Sugisaki had moved out of it 2 weeks ago after waking up screaming that someone was in the bathroom mirror." Roku examined the door, placing his spectral palm against it. "This room remembers a death. Forgotten tragedy." In the school archives, Mira dug up blueprints and student records. Room 2B had once been used as storage, converted into a dorm room in 2005. But in the margins of a faded maintenance report from 2004, she found a scribbled note. "Broken floorboard in old bathroom. Smells bad. Might be from pipe or animal remains." Mira and Kaede returned that night and carefully pried up the boards in the private bathroom of 2B. What they found was not animal. Tiny bones, a half-buried infant skeleton, swaddled in rotting cloth. Kaede's face went pale. "Oh my God." Roku bowed his head, a soul taken before breath. The Silent Mother. Mira lit candles and knelt beside the remains. The wailing began again, louder this time, surrounding them. The temperature dropped to freezing. A woman's voice screamed from the mirror. "I didn't want to! I didn't want to!" The mirror cracked, and from its surface emerged a ghost, young, long-haired, wrapped in a school cardigan. Her eyes were sunken, her mouth open in a silent cry. Kaede stepped forward. "You were a student here," she said. Roku added, "You gave birth in secret and buried your child in panic." Mira whispered, "You weren't a monster. You were terrified." The ghost knelt at the floor, her hands trembling. "They said they'd expel me. My parents, they would have disowned me. I didn't know what else to do." Tomo sniffled. "She didn't mean to become a curse." Release. Mira gently gathered the infant's remains and wrapped them in a cloth. "I will give your child a name," she said, "and I will remember you." The ghost's sobs slowed. Kaede placed a single white carnation in the mirror's frame. As Mira completed the cleansing ritual, the wailing faded, the light returned, and the woman's ghost vanished into a warm golden glow. Aftermath. The school quietly built a small garden behind the dorm, a stone marker with no names, just a simple message, for the ones who had no voice. The haunting ended. Room 2B was sealed permanently. Kaede sat with Mira on the dorm's rooftop one evening, watching the stars. "There are so many stories buried in silence," Kaede said, "and so many women punished for being afraid." Mira nodded. "But we can listen. That's where healing starts." Roku stood guard, silent and proud, and Tomo, floating with his usual grin, murmured, "She's the bravest one in the whole school." Chapter 8. The Mysterious Light. It began with sightings near the Shirogane Temple ruins, a crumbling shrine complex hidden deep within the forest on the town's edge. Hikers reported seeing a strange white light floating among the trees after dusk. Some said It moved like a person. Others swore it danced. One boy chased it and returned mute. His sister came to Mira in tears. They say it's just Foxfire, but he's empty now. He won't even look me in the eye. Mira put a hand on her shoulder. It's not Foxfire, she said. It's a specter. Into the woods. That evening, Mira, Kaede, Tomo, and Roku made their way to the old trail. It was overgrown and rarely used. Branches snagged at Mira's jacket. Owls hooted from unseen perches. Kaede frowned. There's residual energy here, strong. Roku nodded. The trees remember. Something sacred once stood here, and something blasphemous followed. As they reached the temple ruins, half swallowed by vines and roots, the light appeared. A floating orb of white-blue flame. Mira raised her charm. It's watching us. The flame pulsed once and shot into the darkness. Tomo blinked. Did it just invite us? The Shrine of Eyes. They followed the light deeper until they reached an overgrown sub-shrine. Carvings lined the stone, hundreds of open eyes etched into the walls, gazing in every direction. Mira stepped forward, and the light hovered in place. Then, from the shadows, a form emerged. A woman in ceremonial robes, mouth sewn shut, and glowing eyes like moonstones. Kaede raised her gun. Spirit guardian? No, Roku said, his hand on his hilt. Spectre priestess. She was bound to protect this place, and then forgotten. Mira stepped forward carefully. You were the last caretaker, weren't you, of the old shrine? The spectre didn't answer, but the trees rustled, whispering in a language Mira could almost understand. Images flooded her mind. Flames, intruders, the shrine violated, the priestess killed, her soul trapped inside a spell, bound to wander in light until someone listened. The Boy's Curse. Back at Mira's home, Kaede examined the boy who had chased the light. His spirit aura was intact, but one thread had been burned. She didn't mean harm, Mira realized. She saw him as a threat, another intruder. Roku spoke quietly. She seeks a successor, someone to carry the shrine's burden. Until then, she sees all who enter as enemies. We need to finish the ritual she died in the middle of, Kaede said, and release her. Mira, dressed in a borrowed shrine robe, returned to the ruins under the full moon. She recreated the ceremony from old texts, painting symbols on the stones and lighting incense. The light appeared again, hovering, cautious. Your duty is done, Mira said gently. Let me finish it for you. The spectre priestess floated close, her glowing eyes flickering. Mira placed a final seal on the altar. Rest now. This place is not forgotten. For the first time, the priestess smiled, just faintly. Her form shimmered, faded, and split into 1,000 soft lights that vanished into the trees. Peace in the temple. The boy's voice returned the next morning. He remembered nothing, but smiled again. The town marked the temple ruins as a protected cultural site. The shrine was cleaned, and a new path opened for quiet visits. Kaede adjusted her earpiece. That spirit waited centuries for someone to finish her duty. Tomo twirled in the moonlight. We should get Mira a ceremonial hat. Roku gave Mira a rare nod. Tonight, you were more than a psychic. You were a guardian. Mira looked at the silent, moonlit trees and felt them watching back, not with fear, with thanks. With thanks. Chapter 9. The Story of the Old General Ghost. It was rare to see General Roku speak about his past. He was always composed, stern, protective, always ready to draw his spectral sword when Mira faced danger. But even spirits carry burdens, and tonight the past came knocking. It began when a katana, worn, nicked, and wrapped in faded silk, was donated anonymously to the Minatohama History Hall. The curator asked Mira to examine it. Something in the sword's hilt hummed with heavy emotion. When Mira touched the blade, Roku appeared immediately, his face paler than usual. "That's mine," he said. Ghosts of the Battlefield. Roku had always been formal, never sharing too much, but as they sat in the flickering candlelight of Mira's attic, he finally spoke. My real name was Shirogane Rokuimon. I led troops during the final years of the Bakumatsu. We fought for the shogunate, knowing we were losing. Kaede listened quietly. Tomo floated, uncharacteristically still. I wasn't just a general. I was a man desperate to preserve what he knew. I gave orders that cost hundreds of lives. I thought I was right, that honor meant never surrendering. He looked away. When the final battle came, I disobeyed a retreat order. I led a charge. I died. So did my men. I thought I'd become a war hero. Instead, I became a ghost. The battlefield calls again. News reached Mira of strange sightings at Sekiba Hill, the site of that very battle. Visitors reported marching sounds, disembodied shouts, and phantom gunfire echoing in the night. Mira, Roku, Kaede, and Tomo went to investigate. The battlefield was now a quiet, grassy plain, marked only by a small memorial stone. Suddenly, a ghostly army shimmered into view, men in dusty uniforms, faces hardened, swords raised, and at their front, a younger version of Roku, eyes wild, shouting commands only he could hear. Kaede reached for her gun. "Is that—" "No," Roku said softly. "That's who I used to be." Facing his shadow. The young spirit version of Roku didn't recognize the modern one. He charged forward, echoing orders across the plains. "Hold the line! Die for glory!" The spectral soldiers followed, but Mira stepped forward and raised her voice. "This is no longer your war." The ghost army paused. Mira turned to Roku. "You have to face him. Tell him the truth." Roku walked into the field. The younger version turned, confused. "You betrayed our cause," the young Roku shouted. "You fled into spirit form." "No," the older Roku said. "I stayed too long. I let pride drown judgment. We could have lived, learned, changed." The soldiers murmured. Some lowered their swords. "I was wrong," Roku whispered. "You don't have to keep fighting. You can go home." One by one, the ghostly soldiers began to vanish, until only the younger Roku remained. He looked up, tears in his eyes. Then he smiled and disappeared. Redemption. The battlefield returned to silence. Roku stood taller, his spectral armor gleaming faintly. Kaede nodded to him. "You gave them peace, and yourself." Tomo floated up and saluted. "Sir, yes, sir." Mira smiled. "You were always brave, but this was courage too." Roku bowed deeply to her. "Thank you, Mira. You gave this old soul something no war ever could. Forgiveness." Chapter 10. The Story of the Playful Boy in the 1930s. Most of the time, Tomo was laughter. He floated in midair making faces, turning into cats, buzzing around Mira's head during serious ghost investigations. But there were times, even brief, when the spark dimmed in his golden eyes and his smile faded just slightly. It was hard to imagine him sad, until the day Mira found a tin toy plane in a second-hand shop. The moment she touched it, the room got colder, and Tomo disappeared. The plane was rusty, but the initials etched on the wing were clear. T.M. Mira took it home and placed it on the table. She waited. Tomo appeared that evening, but didn't speak. He floated near the toy, staring at it. "I had one like this," he said quietly. "Mama gave it to me on New Year's, 1938. Kaede and Roku listened as Mira leaned in. "You've never told us about your past," she said gently. "I was just a kid," Tomo said. 10 years old. The war was starting. Papa was already gone. A ghost in a shelter. Tomo led them the next day to a narrow alley in the old quarter of town. There, behind a shuttered tailor shop, they found a forgotten air raid shelter sealed with iron bars. "I died here," he said simply. He pointed at the cracks. "There was a raid. Mama and I ran in. The building above us collapsed. I remember her covering me, singing to keep me calm." Mira felt the stone wall with her fingers, cold, damp, and behind it, a lingering spirit. But it wasn't Tomo, it was his mother. Goodbye. Mira entered the shelter alone that night, using spirit-walking incense. Inside, the ghost of a young woman sat curled in the dark, humming softly. She clutched a ghostly version of the tin plane. "Mama?" Tomo whispered beside Mira. The woman raised her head. "Tomo?" They hadn't seen each other in decades. "I thought you left me," she whispered. "I couldn't move on. I was afraid." "I was here the whole time," Tomo said, "just stuck." Mira watched them, heart aching. "You protected him, even after death," she said to the mother. "He's safe, and it's time for you to rest." Tomo's mother smiled, kissed his ghostly forehead, and faded in a shower of cherry blossom petals. The plane that flew again. Mira kept the toy plane on her shelf. When she woke the next day, it was floating mid-air, doing lazy loops. Tomo grinned beside her, more vibrant than she'd ever seen him. "I think I'm lighter now," he said, "like a balloon." Kaede leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "You're still annoying, but adorable," he said, striking a pose. Roku, ever reserved, gave a small bow. You honored her, Tomo, and yourself. Mira smiled warmly. Let's keep going, she said. There are still more to help. Chapter 11. The Story of the Lady Cop from the 2000s. Kaede Nakamura didn't talk about her death. She barked orders, scolded Tomo for floating too close to civilians, and trained Mira like a rookie on her first day at the academy. But beneath the cool exterior was a deep silence, one that Mira had always sensed but never touched. Until the day a police radio crackled in Mira's school bag. Only the radio was broken, an antique from a second-hand market. Yet when it crackled to life, a voice called out, Unit 5, officer down. Suspect fled toward Yokura Bridge. Repeat, officer down. Kaede froze. I know that call, she whispered. That's my last call. The case reopened. The date was clear, October 18th, 2003. Mira dug through public records and found the incident. Officer Kaede Nakamura, age 27, killed in the line of duty during pursuit of a wanted criminal. Official cause, stab wound to the chest. Suspect, never caught. But as Mira investigated deeper, she discovered missing files, redacted interviews, and one strange note scrawled in an old police log. She wasn't alone, but no backup arrived. Kaede stood behind her, fists clenched. They abandoned me, she said quietly. Return to the bridge. That evening, they visited Yokura Bridge, now just a shadowed underpass beneath the new expressway. Cold rain fell steadily, soaking the pavement. Kaede walked slowly, eyes fixed on the spot where she'd fallen. I was chasing him, she said. He stopped right here, pretended to give up. Then, the blade. She touched her chest, where no wound now remained. Mira knelt and placed her charm against the concrete. The air shimmered. A scene replayed, Kaede in pursuit, tackling a man in a gray hoodie, a struggle, screams, a knife flashing in the rain. She collapsed. But then, something new. A fellow officer watching from the shadows, who turned and ran. Officer Murray, Kaede whispered. He left me. I trusted him. The betrayal. Mira tracked down Murray, now retired, living alone in a quiet neighborhood. When she confronted him, he broke down. I froze, he whispered. I saw it happen. I ran. I told them I got lost, that I arrived too late, but I left her to die. Mira didn't yell. She didn't have to. Kaede stood beside her, unseen by him, her gaze hard, but not angry. Say her name, Mira said. Ma'am, he whispered. Kaede Nakamura. I'm sorry. I should have died with you. Tears fell from his face. Kaede lowered her eyes. I didn't want you to die, she said quietly to Mira. I just wanted someone to admit the truth. Justice and Peace. With the full story made public, the department added Kaede's name to the wall of fallen officers, not just as a casualty, but as a hero betrayed by fear. They held a small memorial. Mira lit incense and placed a photo of Kaede by her altar at home. Kaede appeared, arms folded, leaning against Mira's desk. You didn't have to do all that, she muttered. I wanted to, Mira said. Tomo gave her a mock salute. Officer Cool finally got the honor badge. Roku nodded once. Your duty is complete. Your name is clean. Kaede allowed herself a small smile, the kind Mira had never seen before. Thanks, kid. And for once, Kaede stood still and let herself rest. Chapter 12. The First Meeting and New Beginnings. Before the cases, before the haunted schools and cursed portraits, before the title, The Girl Who Speaks to Ghosts, there was just Mira Takahashi, age 15, living quietly in Minatohama. She was a solitary girl with strange habits. She heard whispers others didn't. Lights flickered when she cried. Animals followed her silently. She didn't understand it. She just knew she was different and alone. Until the night of the red moon. The graveyard storm. The sky had turned crimson during a thunderstorm that October night. Mira, after another fight with her mother, had fled to the edge of town, to the old cemetery. She stood between crumbling tombs, tears mixing with rain. Then came the voice. "You shouldn't be here, girl." An old man in a war-stained uniform emerged from the mist, holding a spectral katana. General Roku. At first, she thought he was a hallucination. Then a second voice chimed in. "Cool sword, Grandpa. You always scare people like that?" A floating boy with bright eyes and a 1930s haircut hovered nearby. Tomo. And then a third figure stepped out of the shadows. Short black jacket, hand on her hip, eyes sharp as blades. Kaede. "She's the one," Kaede said. "The girl with the sight. Chosen." Mira backed away, overwhelmed. "You're not real," she whispered. "We're very real," Roku said. "She's strong," Tomo said, doing lazy flips. "She's a raw nerve with a brain," Kaede added, "and ghosts are drawn to her. She needs guidance or she'll burn out." They introduced themselves as spiritual mentors, guides, watchers, each bound by the same call, to help souls find peace, and they had chosen Mira to carry on their work. The first case. That very night, they took her to a house near the edge of the forest. A girl had died there a week earlier. Everyone thought it was an accident, but her ghost lingered, trapped in the mirror. Mira was terrified, but listened. She let the spirit speak. She calmed her. She saw the way. When it was over, the ghost faded peacefully. Roku smiled. "You're a natural. The pact." Under the full moon, the three spirits and the girl stood together in the rain. Kaede extended her hand. "What do you say?" Tomo grinned. "You in, spooky girl?" Mira looked at them, so different, so strange, and yet hers. "I'm in," she whispered. "Now and tomorrow." Back in the present, Mira sat on the hill behind the shrine, looking down at Minatohama. The summer breeze ruffled her hair. A notebook of cases lay in her lap. Kaede leaned against a tree, watching traffic. Tomo floated above, chewing imaginary gum. Roku stood like a statue, quiet but warm. They had helped her grow, and she had helped them heal. There would be more mysteries, more hauntings, more souls in need of peace. But now, Mira knew she wasn't alone. They weren't just mentors. They were family. And as long as there were whispers in the dark, she would answer. Together, they'd continue. Epilogue. A new case begins. Her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "Please help. My little brother says there's someone under his bed, and they're not alive." Mira stood up and smiled. "Let's go, team."